briefly the visage came down and he admitted in Spare that his grandmother, he was sometimes afraid of her.
There's been a lot of commentary that we've seen some signs of change, but not enough. And some of the some of the answers seem really obvious in how they could modernize or improve or represent Britain further. But I do think that, like you said, Harry and Meghan really shined an ugly light into some corners of the royal family. Could you sort of expand on that? Because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, in fact, I've just written the paperback's coming out here in Britain, and in the foreword, the Queen became untouchable. When she got very old, she ties us back to the Blitz, to Winston Churchill. She carried on working in her late 90s. What's not to like? Don't go there. Don't criticize it. We saw that with the almost overly reverential coverage of her funeral, where people weren't even allowed to protest against the new king. That's our democratic right if they want to. It's, I would say, inappropriate and poor timing, but I felt that was mishandled. To go back to the Queen, where I feel, because she embodied the institution, it was her raison d'etre, it was the mission that united her and Philip. And that meant sometimes she did drop the ball as a mother. I'm not blaming her, but that's the reality. Mm-hmm. Charles was brought up in a most peculiar fashion. Not only was he bundled off to boarding schools that didn't suit him, but even when he was alongside his mother, he got a handshake. And he had to wait his turn for the handshake when he'd been separated from her for 6 months post Commonwealth tour, for example, on her way back in 1954. Now, we see that pattern repeated, and it was very clear in Harry's book, Spare, where, yes, Harry understood all the language that Harry used to criticize the monarchy. He was always very careful to shield the Queen. I thought the really interesting bit was when briefly the visage came down and he admitted in Spare that his grandmother, he was sometimes afraid of her. That actually she intimidated him like she intimidated her son, because not only was she granny, but she was this institution. Mm-hmm. She was his commander-in-chief, she was his queen, she was his grandmother. And I think that some of that stuff bleeds down. It's very difficult, I think, to manage both those roles. The reason we're so fascinated by the royal family is that it intersects, it's an institution of state, and it's a real family. And we see that sometimes that does mean it's difficult to be a part of that family without carrying some of the baggage. And when people go, oh, why can't Harry just walk away? I'm like, because he was born a prince in a weird institution. You can't leave that stuff behind you. It doesn't matter how far away you go. It's always part of your DNA, your furniture. And in that respect, I have a degree of empathy not empathy because I'm not a princess, but I have a degree of like, oh gosh, that's going to be a hard one to shake off, Harry. Mm-hmm. Good luck with that.
For more news content and exclusive interviews, make sure to hit the sub, like, and bell button down below and visit usmagazine.com.